Thanks all for being here. Again, my name is Scott Provence. I'm coming out of Seattle, Washington, up in the corner of the US, and excited to talk about AI in general, AI from kind of a non-computer science background. And then as we start to build that bridge out of the world of computer science into things like humanities and HR and leadership and development, how we can start to connect the dots between AI and something like soft skills. So really excited to hear your thoughts on this. I've got some activities and some exercises that I will kind of pose to you, but I really do want this to be as interactive as possible. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen, and then again, hopefully you'll get some thumbs up or confirmations. Yeah, looks like that's able to come through fine. So we'll share through some stuff, and we'll be eagerly watching the chat window to see what sparks interest for people, what people might want to learn a little bit more about, and then we'll just see where we go. So just to get started, again, I always write down some learning objectives for myself, what I'm hoping to discuss, uncover, impart, explore with you all. So everything from let's really understand, let's unpack what soft skills even means. Can we agree on can that be quantified, and if so, how? And if that can be quantified, how can we use things like large language models or other AI tools, systems, algorithms? Well, and as we start to answer those questions, we will dive a little bit into the world of data science. We'll learn about supervised and unsupervised learning, learn a little bit about some of these different types of algorithms. I'm not a data scientist myself, and so everything that I explain will kind of be in that high level perspective. And I'm sure we'll have experts on the call here who can add their own expertise, and please do. And then I'm really excited to show you some real time examples of how we've done this with organizations. So some real world applications of how we've used AI and specifically used it within soft skills environments. Looking at this list, if there's anything that you really were hoping to come to this session today wanting to learn about that you don't see on here, put it in the chat. Again, we can kind of keep this as, I really do want to keep this as dialogue driven as possible. So drop thoughts and questions even at the start here of like, hey, could you please talk a little bit about X, Y, and Z, and we'll see what we can get to within this hour. I've also got my email at the end. I'll make sure I try to drop it in the chat as well. And I really do, if you can tell by my excited hand gestures already, I love talking about this stuff. So if there's anything that we don't get to, please reach out to me and we'll talk more offline. Okay, so I'm seeing some thumbs up in the chats too. Perfect, thank you. Let's talk a little bit, briefly introduce myself. So I am a senior learning strategist. I work a lot with organizations of all sizes. I've written books on this types of topics within the world of training, learning, and development. Done lots of speaking. I've had a bit of a specialty in health tech for a while. But for a lot of the time, I'd be spending years and years building these learning programs for all sorts of clients. And oftentimes they would come to me saying, help make our material standardized. And if anyone in the learning and development or HR industries is really do want to figure out what can we standardize, and then let's figure out how to scale it. So, oftentimes that would combine into a form of digital learning, asynchronous learning, some sort of combination of that. And again, for those that are in this world, that probably sounds fairly familiar. But then every once in a while, I would have these requests from clients, and they would kind of throw in as a oh, and by the way, can you do this for leadership? Like, this is a great standard operating procedure training, or this is a great training on patient privacy regulations, but what can you do for our leadership programs or our soft skill programs? Can you standardize and scale those just as effectively? And my answer was always like, yeah, let's see what we can do. But I really wanted to kind of pause and ask myself that question, kind of just on a broad level. I'll pose it to you all as well. And again, if you have thoughts, there's no right or wrong answers here, but yeah, can you really standardize something like soft skills? Even to just answer yes or no probably needs a lot more clarification. Maybe that points us toward the fact that this is a very fuzzy area. So this was something a couple of years ago I really after enough people had asked me this, I wanted to dive into this more and figure out, well, how much can we standardize soft skills? And I'll start with the standardization question before we get to the scaling question, and that's where AI is going to come in a little bit more. So, can we standardize soft skills? Can we agree on what can we agree on what counts as an empathetic response? Well, let's try it out. So actually, we've got a poll here we want you to kind of chime in on. But I think we've got this. Oh, perfect. I think Dan pulled this up. Which of these responses is the most empathetic here? So I'm going to pull this up on the screen. You'll see it in the poll as well. But you see 3 responses, and we've got votes coming in already. Awesome. So which response is the most empathetic? You come to someone. I'm gonna play out the little scenario. You come to someone and they look like they might be upset, and you want to empathize with them, and so you could say, you're upset. You could say, I can tell that you're upset. Or you could say, are you upset? Got some voting coming in. Excellent. I will say this is so far. I don't want to tip the scales too much. Let other people have a few seconds to make their guess. But I will say that so far this is pretty standard to what I'm seeing in terms of responses when I ask this question. All right, maybe last 15 seconds to cast your vote. We got a good little group coming in. Awesome. All right. I don't know if you're able to see the results, but we can close. Yeah, let's close the polls and share the results here. So we've got what is it here? 31% voted for I can tell that you're upset. So our key leader here being the I can tell you're upset response, followed closely with 24% saying are you upset. So our two pretty clear leaders, and then coming in at the end here at 6%, just looks like 3 votes maybe out of the total here. You're upset. Perfect. So let's stop sharing these results. I'm going to go back and share my screen again. Let's see if I can get this back up. Perfect. Here we go. All right, so there's our screen. And again, we've got our votes coming in. Clear favorite of I can tell you're upset, followed closely by are you upset? For those that voted in one of these 2 categories, actually for any of these categories, put in the chat why you voted the way you did. And maybe for our key leader up here, what is it about I can tell that you're upset that felt empathetic? See what's coming in the chat. I often get responses, and we'll see what comes in here. But I often get responses of, I want to make an I statement, which is great. Yeah, like I statements. I've learned about those. It's one way. Yeah. So this is kind of coming from me. I'm extending something out, and you can kind of see what you want. Yeah, you can. This is great. You can recognize a specific person's behavior. Yeah. Doesn't imply judgment. Yeah, I don't want to over guess or kind of be like, wow, that was really really far off. Asking empathy demonstrated by asking if the person's upset. So are you upset? I don't want to. That's even less judgment, right? I don't even want to make a guess here. So this is how for years when I would go through management training, leadership training, these are all the lessons that I was imparted on as well. And then all of a sudden, I got to the world of behavioral health counseling and healthcare, and found some quantitative data which showed me something completely different and really surprised me. So there are all these clinical studies and therapeutic practices that actually give us some quantifiable heuristics, some measured and tested ways that, again, don't disprove everything that we've learned about making I statements, refraining from judging. All these things are really important, but all of a sudden now we have some additional heuristics that say, listen more than you speak. Okay, yeah, we kind of knew that one probably. This was an interesting one we found in a lot of studies. Talk about the other person more than yourself. Oh, interesting. So on the one hand, I statements are really good because they're coming from my own position. But if I over rely on that and I say, I can tell you're upset, look at how great I am. I'm really perceptive and I can really see what's happening right now. Maybe I'm not talking enough about the other person. Another thing that was surprising, pose more statements and reflective statements specifically than questions. And again, something that totally flipped my understanding what empathy was on its head. I always thought, are you upset? What can I do? How can I help? Was a really great way to open up the door. And what a lot of these clinical studies were showing was actually saying something like "you're upset" can feel hard for us to do as caring people that don't want to make judgments and don't want to overstep, but actually can be received in a very positive way. And again, even with these quantifiable studies coming out, this is not just some binary black and white situation. So all of these need to be taken with a grain of salt as we think about how do we frame our responses to very specific situations, but something for us to think about. And it started to change my perspective of how empathy can potentially be measured. What is the data showing us? All right. One other question for you, and we'll launch one more poll, and then we'll leave you alone from the pop quiz perspective. But I want to ask, which of these three options here is an open-ended question? So which of these is an open-ended question? Are you okay? How about we talk for a bit? And why are you sad? And we think about open-ended questions. Remember, open versus closed. Closed being I can answer this very briefly, very shortly. Often a yes or no is a closed-ended question versus open-ended being could be anything. I could say, you don't even know what I might say. So closed-ended, much more yes, no, 5 a.m., purple, I want a hamburger, not a hot dog, something very, very brief. And an open-ended being a lot more open. This is great coming in. Okay, I won't put you on the spot for too long. So yeah, maybe 10 more seconds to cast your vote if you want it. And then we'll show the results here. Very cool to see. All right, let's show our results for pop quiz number 2. And now that you are probably guessing here as I'm showing all of my studies, like what's he gonna pull here? What I thought this was gonna be one thing, and he's gonna tell me something else. Actually, so this is pretty great. We've got pretty clear favoritism for why are you sad, which I guess is absolutely an open-ended question. Even these ones probably could be answered in an open-ended way, but if you really dug into them, are you okay? Yes or no. How about we talk for a bit? Could even be it could be answered in a yes or no way. So probably the most open-ended is why are you sad? Tell me a bit why you're sad. Even that's like a statement version of this. But opening the door for really anything here. All right, we'll stop sharing those results. I'm going to go back to sharing my screen and explain a little bit about why is Scott talking about this, and specifically, what does this have to do with AI? I thought we were talking about AI with soft skills, and he's asking us a bunch of these weird pop quiz questions. So you can think of how we responded as a group here as an example, actually, of a deep learning model. So deep learning as a subset of artificial intelligence. So whereas maybe more traditional machine learning models follow more rule-based if-then statements, deep learning uses neural networks and a massive amount of data to perform very complex tasks. And neural networks, you can probably see where that analogy connects. It very much like a human brain. And we just had a bunch of human brains processing some questions and using a lot of different lived experiences, situational experiences, education to answer some very complex tasks. So our group acted as a neural network to answer something like which is an open-ended question, and did some classification, some categorization, and as a majority pointed to why are you sad? We think that's the most open-ended question here. So even though very basic pop quiz question, that's really cool. We just did. And when we think about analogies and how to understand and unpack some of these deep learning models, this is one of the ways I'd like to kind of introduce and teach this. A deep learning algorithm, the model can classify something like, is this a closed-ended or open-ended question, in a similar way to what we just did. You have to understand language. You have to understand what open and closed means. You have to have enough experience with this category to make an educated guess around that. So again, what we did as a group just there, guessing our questions, putting them into certain categories, it's an example of classification, something that artificial intelligence models can do very well. However, what you probably are more used to with algorithms in this day and age is more of that large language model category. Large language models can still classify text. That's what they're, one of the key things that they do. They are trained on a ton of it. So they have to understand what parts of speech are and what different languages mean, and how we do all of that stuff. And classification is great, but you're probably more familiar with large language models in this day and age for their text generation capabilities. So again, I just have a little video up here, and okay, GPT, tell me a story, and off it goes. I can push generate, and here we go. What's really cool is I can have a very similar brief introduction to large language models for text generation capabilities as well. So if you are looking for a way to describe to your teams, this is really what LLMs do. You can give them the classification pop quiz and say, this is how our group can classify. We can also do this for text generation, and I will show you how we do that right now. First thing I need before I show you how text generation with large language models works is I need 3 brave volunteers to volunteer in the chat that they are willing to participate in a very brief little game. And where the game is only going to be played on the chat. All you have to do is drop in a few words here and there. Oh good, we've got a couple of attendees already coming in. And yes, we will have, thanks Jen to moderate. Okay, so we will have, who's showing up? Jim and Bibian and Anwar. Let's have those 3. Anwar, Bibian, and Jim. So let's actually go in that order as well. So Anwar, Bibian, and Jim. And I apologies if I'm mispronouncing names. So what we're going to do with these 3 brave volunteers is we are going to play a one-word story game. So we've got our 3 volunteers. Let's go in that specific order. And what I want you 3 to do is to play a one-word story game. Not yet. I will say go. But what we're going to do is Anwar will start with a single word and post it in the chat. And then Bibian will make the next word. And then Jim will make the next word. And then we'll jump back to the top. And we'll keep going one word at a time. Everyone else stay off the chat during this game. And the rule is you have to fit your words together to form a story. Okay, so makes sense for our 3 brave volunteers. Let's go ahead and start our chat here. All right, we've got once. Once I saw. We won't force them to go through everybody. Anwar, you're up again. Once I saw there. Let's go one more round through at least. Once I saw there was. This is great. We are forming a sentence collectively as a group. Might seem very basic, but this is really, really cool and complex. Anwar, do you want to finish up our sentence here? Once I saw there was some. I'm hanging on a cliffhanger here. What is this? How is this story going to end? Nice. Oh, Bibian, bring us home. One final word. We can't end our story without a noun to close us off here. Apples. Perfect. Okay. Thank you. Let's give a virtual round of applause to our 3 volunteers here. You could see how complex that was and lengthy in the sense that we had to. Okay, shoot. It's my turn again. What am I doing? What was this sentence again? How do I type this down? What we were doing, what these 3 brave volunteers were doing, was predictive generation, just like ChatGPT, large language models, Gemini, all these other ones that you're hearing about right now. These are very fancy and elaborate one-word story machines. And you saw how complicated and complex it was to form one sentence. Imagine all of the layers and the training data and the servers and the computing power is needed for what some of these LLMs are doing in today's day and age. So this was our chat group's neural network here. Again, we use deep learning. We use neural networks for 3 hyper intelligent people to understand and process everything about the characters and subject and story arc to basic grammar usage. So if someone said nice, I can't, that's how does that modify the noun that I want to say? My order in line, the word said so far. All of this stuff is an example of how LLMs work as one-word story machines. And here's kind of on the right side, a more advanced view of what's going on underneath the hood of large language models. So you kind of see it creates stories in a very kind of piecemeal way. So very similarly, the one word story processing is happening by saying, I've landed on it. What am I referencing when I say it? Let's go back in the process and check again. These are all these different layers that are operating uh, within an LLM. The reason that I'm spending so much time thinking about this is it's very important for us to understand what these different AI models are doing. So we did some, and again, we did some somewhat rudimentary practices and games of this, but by classifying, this is, I'm going to vote A, I'm going to vote B, I'm going to vote C. By comparing our group's results, classifying a answer is very different from predicting the next word in a sentence. And so it's important for us as we start to apply artificial intelligence to use cases, real world scenarios, that we really start to think about what we want it to do. And so that's what we're going to spend. I'll kind of pause right here, as I'm kind of wrapping up our definitions section before we jump into some of the more nuts and bolts of how we've started to apply this in the real world, to see what questions are coming up here. So chance for you to kind of pause. I'll get a drink of water, and you can kind of think about all of the stuff that we've covered so far: classification, predictive generation, deep learning, neural networks, whether or not you can quantify soft skills, all of these things. Yeah, see what questions might come up for you, or if this is all hanging together so far. Oh, the sense of reflecting. Yeah, this is a great question. Reflection. If I'm understanding the question correctly, and please do, yeah, jump back in if there's more to clarify. We will actually talk a little bit more about reflections later on, but um, how can we how is reflecting someone's emotion, or what they share back to them, a way of empathizing? This is actually one of the hardest, most complex, and yet most powerful skills. For more information on reflecting, you can check out the therapeutic practice called motivational interviewing. There's a lot of great clinical studies and details from there, but we'll dive a little bit into. I'll kind of do a very poor summative job of trying to condense that into like 30 seconds a little bit later. But as a tool to be able to reflect back someone's emotion, can be a great way to just kind of test out and guess at how they're feeling, but not doing it in necessarily a judgmental way. So yeah, saying you're upset, even to someone who might not define themselves as upset, gives them an opportunity to say, no, it's not upset, it's just frustrated, or yeah, try it out. Let's see what other questions are coming in. So far, so good. Yeah, great question. Um, okay, well, so if other ones come in, yeah, again, as you start to consider all of this, we've done a lot of foundation building for this first half, right? So we kind of just started to lay the basic building blocks of, okay, I think I understand now neural networks, deep learning. I'm starting to piece that together. And again, one of the big takeaways we're going to have as we get into our second half here is, what do we want our artificial intelligence models to do? So let's click ahead now. So again, one of the biggest things that I find myself doing now in consulting with clients and really organizations at any stage in their AI journey is really asking them to think about the role they want their AI systems to play. Um, and specifically, as much as today's large language models are super exciting and cool and doing all of these incredible things, and really acting and seeming like they are real life characters in the world, um, to be aware of uh, over indexing on their expertise. Again, not because they haven't had a massive amount of training data, but because they are designed to be one word story predictors. So imagine if our three volunteers were acting out a one word story, and I asked them a very specific question, like, how many professional sports teams are in my hometown of Seattle, Washington? Okay, please answer in a one-word story. Um, that would be really hard for them to do unless they were trained on that specific data. And that is where things like hallucinations can come up, because if we go down our three-person list and it lands on Jim to say there are seven, four, I don't know. It's my job to put the next word in, and I have to make a guess here. That can be really, really difficult. So when it comes to teaching complex topics like leadership or soft skills, something to think about is how can we start to combine AI models and roles to create something that is doing the right types of tasks and roles together. And so this is where really I came to sketch out some of my ideas for building some of our soft skills algorithms that we're using today. And so what I really wanted to do is split up the conversational part of a empathetic conversation with some of the behavioral science data that I was seeing here. And so this is really what I did. So I wanted to recognize, okay, I need some sort of tool that operates as a conversationalist, maybe a student, maybe a coach. And as you think about the industry that you're in, or the organizations, the clients that you work with, this might be kind of that client facing side. So if I'm trying to teach a bunch of people how to answer patient phone calls or tier one IT support requests, maybe you want an AI tool that can mimic those requests as they come in. And this is where large language models are really great. Think back to our three-person volunteer group. If I had said, instead of write a one-word story, if I had said, act as a collective upset patient and speak in one word at a time, they probably could have done that. Everyone kind of can conceptualize or act as a group character there. What's happening on the back end of this? Yeah, a lot of supervised learning, reinforcement learning. Again, we can dive into some of these details, but um, by taking tools like GPT or Gemini, this large language model, and doing some prompt engineering. So I want you to act as a role of a frustrated patient, or I want you to provide some scenarios where someone might be having technical issues with this specific type of computer. I can now create very open-ended situation-specific conversation practice. And again, what I've set as parameters for this part of my AI model is I really just want you to be a conversationalist. So again, the great thing with large language models is they never get tired of talking. And so if I have the right prompt engineering in place, so let's avoid, and a lot of systems are good with their own parameters, but let's avoid inflammatory speech or unsafe topics. But other than that, I want you to have some open-ended conversations, and wherever your learners are wanting to go, we can help you take them there. So as a conversationalist, large language models can be really great there. And this is kind of an example of some of the work that I put together. Pretty basic chat interface, and don't squint at the screen. You don't have to understand all of this, but you can kind of see a live example playing out of. I think for this client, it was we wanted to work on some basic life coaching skills, and so I said, okay, let's make a AI chatbot where you can refresh the scene as many times as you want, and they will just come up with new character names, someone asking for career advice, and giving you a basic scenario in 2 to 3 sentences. For those of you that have worked with ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude or Perplexity or any of these other AI models that are out there, I would guess that you probably have some familiarity with how you would create a prompt like that. So act as X type of person with some of these parameters. I want you to ask me about these 3 topics. Every time I give a response, I want you to complexify your situation with 1 or 2 sentences. And from there, we can build a basic interface that just kind of mimics almost how a GPT site would work. I'll pause there to see if there's questions on kind of building a general AI coach conversationalist, and kind of creating the interface that works for that. I know that I threw out a new term, prompt engineering. So if people have questions on prompt engineering, I know that's kind of getting to be a little bit more common parlance, but happy to talk through more any of the tips and tricks for that. That's like a whole other conversation we could have. But yeah, anything else that comes to mind or questions for the AI as conversationalist side? So far, so good. It looks like perfect. Okay, so if this is our conversationalists, see if we've got questions coming in here. Yeah, please reflect on how audio mode in ChatGPT changes the perception of the conversation. Oh, great question, because that is something that comes up a lot. So um, the text to speech feature. So when these first came out, it was all typing text, and now we have the ability um, to specifically to talk back in terms of audio and have that translate. Interestingly, I've opted maybe more personal preference, although I do feel like there's some studies we could kind of point to. Um, I've opted to avoid using the text to speech feature in most of these so far, only because I think text to speech capabilities are really evolving right alongside a lot of these deep learning neural networks. They're getting incredibly accurate and precise, and they don't always capture every single word or tone or phrasing or punctuation mark that I want to put in. And what I've noticed is when the amount of analysis that you'll see me do on the other side of this screen here is so nuanced that really the difference between a question mark and a period really does matter to me. And so I've decided to kind of opt out of audio mode to this point. I think the technology is getting really, really close to that. But I've decided to opt out of that at this point. The other reason I do it is actually when I'm using this as a coaching tool, so helping, again, future coaches or call center folks practice these skills, having them type it out actually slows down their thinking enough to really be thinking about how am I phrasing this response. And so as long as we are in this kind of training environment, how can I encourage them to slow down that thinking and really practice building out the skill? It's a really great question. I'm glad you asked that. Other question here: any particular format that we need to use when it comes to prompt engineering? I've seen a lot of different formats be popularized, and I honestly I think whatever ones you feel are effective for your scenarios. I would honestly say a lot of trial and error, and just kind of figure out what works best for you. I think these models are getting updated so frequently that to say that there is one specific format that's going to be blanket applicable is yeah, probably not as helpful. So yeah, really good question. Other good question here too. Can ChatGPT respond in a different way depending on your choice of word or emotion? Yeah, so I'd like to use AI to get our salespeople to practice client meetings, but it's really difficult to read into an emotion and respond to that. So yes, GPT can respond differently based on how you are framing the conversation. And I've heard, when we think about this kind of conversationalist side of the setting, I've heard this described as like a shared document that you are working on with a chatbot alongside of it. So as you ask different questions, respond either sharply or compassionately, that will absolutely change how GPT's response will work. That being said, there are certainly some parameters that kind of the moderation layers that are put in place so that GPT will never get so frustrated with you that it will hang up the phone, so to speak. But yes, there absolutely can be twists and turns in the conversation that you help to steer. Cool. Oh, this is great. So yeah, maybe something we'll touch on at the end. Reflect on the future capabilities. Yeah, GPT-5. What's coming down the pike? So yeah, that's another great question. I will pause on that until we get to the end, but because that's another great area to explore more. I love these questions coming in. So thanks to all for asking them. I will try to jump back in and pause a little bit at the end for more questions. But I think we've got kind of our parameters set. And again, the understanding of, okay, large language models, next sentence or next word generators, this is how we can form great conversationalists. And with very low coding experience, you can create a site, embedded function within a training. And again, if you're interested in that, come find me afterwards. We'll talk more. Something that just acts as a conversationalist practice partner that you can drop into an e-learning, a website, anything else that just says, talk to me, I'm going to talk back, and let's just kind of practice. Now, what was important though is to recognize that while we're leveraging a large language model like GPT's capabilities to talk, what we don't want to do is to think that it would have the same kind of expertise to say, does this count? Does my responses in blue here count as a very empathetic situation or response here? So this is where we actually had to embed a different model that was really formulated for an entirely different role. So AI as a conversationalist versus AI as an expert. And this is again where we had to draw a line to say we don't want to rely on GPT to evaluate the conversation. GPT is a really great one-word story partner. What I want now is I want to use my own data sets, my own rules based on all of these clinical studies we've found to create an understanding of what counts as good empathy. And so we'll go back in order to build this, we went back to a lot of empirical studies, what we see from worlds of behavioral counseling, what counts as high empathetic responses, things like listen more than speak, and how many of these skills can we translate into quantifiable heuristics. What's cool is there are a few skills that we really learned we could quantify with enough kind of rule-based programming, coding, and some machine learning help. And this is where we get into things like reflections, which someone had already asked about, suspending one's own perspective. Again, can I talk more about the other person than myself? Getting affirmations for being on track, asking open-ended questions, which we've all collectively learned a bit about already, avoiding minimizing or directing. So instead of just saying, you're sad, don't feel sad anymore. Okay, how does that, maybe that shouldn't, maybe we shouldn't count that as an empathetic statement there. And then, like I mentioned, listening more than speaking. As you look at this list of 6, number one, there's probably more that you could think of. And I'm always eager to hear more that come to mind for others when they think like, for me, empathy means X, Y, and Z. But when we looked at the studies and the data, these are the 6 that came to our mind. I'd love to hear from you any ideas that you would have if I put these 6 in front of you and said, how would you quantify this? How would you count this when you look through someone's conversational transcript? Because again, if I go back one click, what we were trying to do here is say, okay, given these empathetic skills, how can we count whether or not someone is being empathetic? So how would you count some of these? The first thing that came, and I'll give you the kind of the easiest one that was for us to measure, is, okay, listening more than speaking. If I've got a conversation going on here, again, it doesn't really work from text, speaking to someone's question about voice to speech, but can I measure in a recorded conversation who is talking more? Can that be quantified? Yep, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, and these are great. So look in the chat here. People are already getting some great examples in here. How many times someone checks for understanding, right? So am I on the right track, right? And then depending on what I hear, getting an affirmation for being on track. Like, yeah, did I, Jim, did I get that right? Yeah, you totally did. Or no, what I really meant by that, Scott, was that I'm frustrated. I'm not upset. Yeah, absolutely. Giving them a framework with the right steps and counting on this. Yeah. So how can we create that framework for being for people to measure themselves, I guess. This is great. So I love these stories that are coming in the chat. So if you have a chance to look through these, Ilya, this is excellent. Help me realize that I'm not. Yeah. So in practicing with GPT, I realized that maybe I wasn't so good at showing empathy. I have lived that experience more times than I could care to count in that. So I'm right there with you. These are really cool. So I mean, I'm looking through some of the other ones here in the moderations too. Yeah. So this was actually honestly where a lot of our blood, sweat, and tears went into to how to quantify this. So some of these came easier than others. So yes, I can count. I can code up an algorithm pretty quickly that says, did person A or person B speak more? Uh, Getting affirmations for being on track. Again, there's some quantifiable ways I could understand that, and large language models might be able to help. What are all the different ways someone might say, give me an affirmation? Yes, excellent, exactly, kind of, mostly. Can I map those? Can I vector map those words to figure out like everything kind of in that family of this counts as an affirmation? Yes, let's code up a model that helps us analyze that. Suspending one's own perspective. Maybe as straightforward as, who are you talking about? Who's the subject of your response, Scott? Was it you? Was it the other person? Um, Avoiding minimizing or directing, asking open-ended questions. Could that question have been answered with a one-word response? Again, as we start to break down some of these skills, we learned that each one of these can have some quantifiable heuristics around them. Was that a statement or a question? Yes, I can code an algorithm to analyze that. Who is the subject of that sentence? Yes, I can code an algorithm for that. Some of these ones are a lot more complex. What counts as a reflection? Scott, did you summarize what Jim was saying there and really reflect that back to him in an accurate way? Or did you go off and start talking about something totally different? Um, so harder to do, but still something that is quantifiable. And what we were able to create is an algorithm that takes these conversations, um, the ones that you could see and probably envision doing in your own setting, and then analyzes it based on these six specific skills. And so what I'll show is kind of our final putting it all together state is a real life case study and I think this one was, I think we had about 120 employees. This was a wealth management company. So they wanted to really work on some peer-based conversations, communications, and what we basically did, you see kind of a little bit of bells and whistles we put on this, but what you see below here is that basic chat interface. So again, using the best tools of a large language model to be able to have continued conversations. And what's happening above is as this learner goes and has this conversation with this character we've created, our algorithm on the back end is analyzing how well they're applying each of those six skills. And it is giving them instant feedback in the form of, if you did not apply many of these skills, your scenario is going to get darker. And the rain is going to come down heavier, and it will be a little sadder in this person's world. And if you did apply more of these skills, if you reflected and you asked open-ended questions and paused to get kind of that affirmation and that clarification, the world got brighter and it got sunnier out. And this is a great way to kind of continue exploring and provide instant objective feedback for the learner to figure out what is working, not working. Now, we did do a little bit of kind of gamification of this, which kept a lot of people playing a lot longer than we expected them to, because they wanted to know what is going on with this environment. Why is it getting so dark? I thought I was good at empathy, and now all of a sudden I can't see my character anymore. So what we did is we made sure to follow up every single game they played with a breakdown, not only of their full transcript, but then a side-by-side analysis of, here is how we could evaluate that first statement in terms of, did you pose a reflection, yes or no? Did you suspend your own perspective here? So, hi, Aaron, you're feeling totally overwhelmed right now and having a hard time keeping up. Wow, you reflected back what Aaron was feeling. You didn't talk about yourself at all. You're saying you're worried about this. Okay, great. Getting an affirmation. Yeah, Aaron responded by saying, yes, that's right. Great, awesome. Did you ask an open-ended question? No, you missed that time, but let's try the next one. And you avoided minimizing and directing. So again, you can kind of imagine going line by line through your own conversation and saying, wow, I was really great there, or I need a lot of work. Here's what we saw with our results here. In our first conversation, people were actually pretty good. Again, everyone knows, or has experienced, many people, I should say, have experienced that challenge of how do I empathize with someone. And there's a great comment in the chat here. Neurodivergent learners, this can be really hard skill to learn, right? So yeah, that script that yeah, that almost like can I just follow the rules? And can AI be used for neurodivergent learners? Potentially. I would say that those that I have talked to that have gone through this training have talked a little bit about, oh, it was really nice to just understand some kind of, almost yes no binaries. Again, the biggest caution I would have is to not just say that, that's all that empathy ever is, but to be able to concretize and clarify, well, what does count as empathy. This can take some of those first steps toward that. So really great question to ask. um, but you can see here again, our first conversation, good listeners. Reflections, not so much. This was again really hard to do. Suspending one's own perspective, getting affirmation. Yeah, okay, we're kind of on the low end here. We did a great job of listening. And this is tends to be, any large language model I talk with is very wordy, and so this was very easy to kind of stay under the amount of words that they were saying back to us. But what was neat to see is that by even just having a 5-minute conversation and seeing their scores, we then got them together and kind of collectively looked at our answers and said, why was this so difficult? Anyone have a good example of where a reflection did happen? And someone could stand up and say, yeah, I said you're feeling really overwhelmed, and that really seemed to work. We then had people go back through this game again, same game, same prompt, same character, and every time you refresh it, it's a new scenario. But have another conversation now that you've had a chance to practice it. And all of a sudden, we're now able to show people on an individual level, but then also on a collective team-wide level, your empathy skills based on what we're measuring are quantifiably improving here. So we're listening even more than we first did. This was hard to bump up, but we got a couple more percentage points. The last group actually did just a couple weeks ago, bumped this up 20%. So I think they were at 10 and we're up at 30 by the end. But this was really hard. Suspending perspective, yeah, absolutely, we crushed it. Getting affirmations, yeah, 9% bump, 9% bump. These are epic when you think about the amount of short-term, just-in-time practice that's happening here. Our average skill increase size was 10% between the first and last conversation. So again, what's happening here is this combination of conversational practice, very easy to do with LLMs, and then a very labor-intensive but valuable back-end coding of what do we want to measure here. And once we get that in place, having the right understanding of what AI can do should allow you to code up something that actually can measure that pretty well. I will kind of pause as we talk about results there. Again, it's this combination of multiple conversations taken together over time with some sort of analytical backend side, and this is where I have a lot of fun talking with people about this. Like, what do you want to measure, and can we get AI to help us quantify? And by doing this with the right data sets, the right experts in the room, we were able to take something even as fuzzy and soft as empathy and put some benchmarks in place that can now help people understand, hey, our marketing team is actually really good at listening, and our sales team is really good at making reflective statements. How can we use these insights to kind of cross train our teams or expose where we're really weak collectively as a group here? This type of quantifiable data can go a long way in helping people know what next steps they want to take. So I want to pause there again. I do want to circle back to that question that was asked earlier about what's the kind of the future, what's the next model here. But yeah, other questions that are coming in here. I'll give you a couple seconds to think about things. There's a great comment that put in the chat here, and I won't do it justice by summarizing it. But the idea that communication is more than just words, and so the idea that nonverbals, body language, eye contact or not eye contact, all of these things is also really important for us. Absolutely agree. And I think what's so weird about that is, oftentimes the training that I'm brought in for are uh, communication that is happening via chat and via phone calls. Where again, it's so hard. And phone calls, it's, we still have tone of voice, we still have the cadence of a conversation, but these digitized environments where we lose some of the things that are most widely looked at, and in terms of empathy. So like I've lost I'm a disembodied voice, even right now, right? I mean, I guess you can see me on the screen here, but even, probably seeing me a little in a little postage stamp. So that kind of push pull of, digitization taking away some of those things that we really do need to focus on. So yes, great point. We do need to keep thinking about these other things that aren't even, that we haven't even talked about here, the body language and the tones of voice and all of these things that go alongside the nuts and bolts of verbal communication. So yes, a question here. So it's better to say you're upset than are you upset? I get that. I get this question a lot, especially right after that first quiz. Like, no way, that doesn't. No, I don't agree. So I will say, yeah, like it's again not even when our algorithm spitting back data saying this was a good reflection, bad. I think every conversation does need to have that. Every conversation is unique. I will say that as soon as I learned what a reflective statement was, so to go back and say, you're feeling really upset right now, I tried it out in my actually with my wife and with my kind of personal conversations. And it felt like I had unlocked some secret communication language. I kept expecting to get caught or called out of, how dare you make that judgment of me, or how dare you go so far, like that's not what I said at all. And it never happened. People kept, every time I was off, people just would jump in and clarify, oh, and that's not really what I meant, it was something else. And they would kept going, and they would actually talk more. So it surprised me. And again, I definitely don't want to go out and say like, this is, the blanket statement, this is always going to be the right way to say it. But yeah, I will send you some more stuff if you're interested, or find me afterwards. It's very, very surprising that reflective statement can be so powerful. Um, yeah, and that's a good point. So there are AI tools out there that, where you can analyze body language and eye contact. This actually, to tie this back in with someone's earlier question about the future of AI. I think those models, I see what they're doing. They do have a ways to go. Just in terms of the nuances, again, like that we're talking about here. There's so much more nuance that happens within how we hold ourselves, and again, we're a global team, just in the people that we're talking today. When I think about the nuances that will need to happen to take place in order to get a model to that state, yeah, I think we'll be a while from that. Oh, good. So should you create your own chatbot in GPT, and what instructions do you provide to train it on training you in empathy? Again, one of the best ways to answer that question is think about, or for me to answer it, and I know probably can't do it justice in just a couple minutes here, but when you're thinking about, can I take a GPT interface or Gemini, or any of these models, and teach it to train me on empathy? Ask yourself, could I get a team of one word story experts, or not even experts, a team of one word story game players to do this in a, complete the next word in the sentence training. Maybe the challenge with those types of models is they are really good at predicting the next word. They will always kind of predict what is the most average, most probabilistic word to come in that sentence. And depending on what you're trying to learn, that could be great, because I just need practice. I need to get up my reps in terms of conversations. But in terms of what counts as empathy, GPT actually does ask a lot of closed-ended, I can tell that you're upset types of questions. A lot of people and a lot of the training data out there doesn't necessarily match up with what behavioral psychologists and counselors were finding. Yeah, other experience with other languages as well. So we've only done this in English so far, but that's another great question that comes up. So within an international company, how well does this track? The behavioral counseling world has done these types of skills worldwide. So something that we tend to see that crossover. But another really great question. Um, yeah, how would you learn to practice prompt engineering? Practice within whatever tools you're working within. Um, a really short answer to that question is, can you actually, when you do your practice, so much of what we're doing within these large language models is treating them like people. So I have a conversation, I say hi, I say thank you. What happens if I start to break down that conversational interface? Do my prompts improve when I just say the top 10 skills I need to learn for empathy are one, and then I leave it blank and I see what it does. Change up how you are prompting all the way down to your sentence level can really unlock things for you. This is great. Okay, so and we're coming up at the end here. Just a couple more minutes. I wanted. I hope I can recapture the chat window here, because I do want to make sure I'm coming back and answering as many of these questions as I can. But last kind of takeaways and take home work, and then I'll share my email. Actually, I'll put my email on my screen right here. At email.com. So there's my email, and you'll see it on the next screen as well. But what can you do with this information? I've had people really appreciative of like the little 5-minute like what is AI thing. So take the one word story game, take the classification examples, use those. If it helps you to help a team or a team of stakeholders get a little more comfortable with like what is this AI thing. I think the more that we can play these types of introduction activities, the more helpful will be. So other things, help define your organization's needs. So is it that we need a general understanding of what AI can do? Is it that we need our own instance of a large language model? Is it that we want to become better prompt engineers? That's a very different goal than we want to create an expert model. Becoming a better prompt engineer won't necessarily get you to, we want an expert model that is going to help analyze all of our customer understandings and provide the best responses for them. Noble goal, but think about the types of AI models you might need to train up for that. And then finally, yeah, as you can tell from me, I always want to hear more about what does leadership or soft skills or any of these kind of fuzzier things mean to you. How do we start to quantify that, and what data can we potentially bring into an algorithm to help it learn? Here is yes. So I think we should have information that we can send out and slides that we can send out. I'll double check with Jen. But there's my email address as well, and I will go back through our list here and answer what I can. And Jen, I'll turn this back over to you.